Hello and welcome back to the A-KID-EMIA podcast. This is episode number 13, and also one of our 8-part series generously funded by the American Philosophical Association. Today we're joined by Dr. Laurie Tollefsen. She's a philosopher, a long-term adjunct at the University of South Carolina, where her husband, Dr. Christopher Tollefsen, also a former guest of the show, is a professor. So today, Laura gets to talk to us a little bit about what it was like deciding to leave the tenure track pipeline. She also shares some of her teaching hacks and the virtues of long-term adjuncting, including for family life. So without further ado, so I first just wanted to thank you for giving me your time and coming on here because I have for a long time, I'd say probably years, been trying to find someone like you to talk to, somebody who, pursued academic training and then did not choose to pursue, the typical sort of tenure track pipeline. I'm just excited to talk to you, basically, is all I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah.
Usually the way this begins is I just ask people, a little bit about their family background. Now, people who have listened to the episode that I have with your husband will be familiar somewhat with, sort of makeup of your family and kind of your own career trajectory. But if you could just rehash that a little bit for people who haven't listened to Chris's episode, that'd be great.
Okay, sure. Um, current, I'm trying to decide whether to start like with now or go back to, I'll start from more
Yeah.
chronologically. Um, uh, Part of what my story is, our story is, has to do with how young we were when we got married, actually. We were still in college. We got married in between our junior and senior years of college. So we were 20 years old. Um, we had really, we were fairly open about what our future would hold. We didn't have particular plans other than Chris did know that he would like to go to graduate school in philosophy. I personally did not come from an academic family and had never considered graduate school. The only thing that I knew I wanted to do maybe with my future was to do some kind of service like um, Peace Corps or something like that. It was the only thing I had in mind that I might want to do when I finished my undergrad degree. But when we decided to get married, um, we kind of talked about our mutual understanding of how that would look, and we said, well, let's apply for graduate school and see together because we were both philosophy majors, and we'll see what happens. And then if anything comes along to pursue what I had in mind, we would do that. So we did both, actually. We went ahead and got the PhDs in philosophy. Both of us had our first child in the middle of that process, second at the very end of that process. So and I think Chris mentioned I did watch at least part of his episode of his interview with you, and he did mention that our first child was born right after, like within 24 hours of my defense of my prospectus. Um, so that was interesting and fun and good timing. Um,
Those are
but
really generous descriptions of the timing, but I mean, very impressive. So, sorry.
Well, she was born a little bit. We were naive. She was born maybe 2 weeks before the due date, but everyone had told me, "Oh, you'll go late on your first one. You won't go before your due date." So I thought I still had, a good 2 weeks. We didn't even have a car seat yet, so we were. I was so focused on getting the prospectus out of the way before that due date. So it all worked out. But we then, towards the end of that, of our PhD, we had the opportunity to serve as volunteers for a mission order as teachers teaching philosophy in a Catholic seminary in Africa and Ghana. So we felt like we had, just from being kind of open about how our future would proceed, those opportunities, we followed what came before us, and while we were doing that, the chance for Chris to get a tenure track position came up, and so it made sense to go with that. And so in part, what I'm saying is we had yeah, and that was we had two children then by the time we went to Africa, um, and had to make decisions about, well, what would I do, because I had the PhD also and had been teaching for that year when we were in Africa. Um, and we just again decided to kind of play it by ear and see what happened. And I taught right from the start. When we came back, I had the chance to teach one class a semester as an adjunct. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And have we did not know at that time that we were going to homeschool our children, but that also became a natural fit since I was only teaching that one class and I was at home with the children. We went on to have many more children. We have 9 children. And age range of at this point, oldest 33 and the youngest is 16. So yeah, I've been doing, that's what our life has been like. That's what I've been doing ever since. And in part, I told the story that way because I wanted to maybe highlight that we started with a kind of openness about what our future would look like. And I think that allowed it to take the shape that it has taken.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think a lot of people nowadays, and maybe also at the time when Chris was applying, are forced into a kind
Yeah.
of openness because the market is so saturated and so competitive. But for a lot of people, that's not a very liberating experience, as it sounds like it might have been for you. They're quite desperate, and so
Mhm.
um, so I have a lot of questions. First, when you were adjuncting one course a semester, were those usually the same courses or were they different courses sort of as the department had needs that arose?
Mm. Um, it's mostly been the same, but I have taught different courses over the years. It's mostly been even the course that I teach over and over, or have for, I'll teach a certain class for a number of years, and then I might shift if the needs of the department shift. Um, Having had that long relationship with the department, I think I could even request to teach something different if I wanted to. But it does work out well for me to continue to. I find that there's still personal growth even in teaching the same class
Sure. So
repeatedly.
I want to get
Yeah.
to the personal growth question because I actually have a lot of questions there as well. But so I've started adjuncting this year as part of a kind of trial and error approach to discerning which academic position is appropriate for my family, structure, which is largely similar to yours. I hope to have many children. I'm almost at 5. And so, I want to sort of experience this a little bit before committing to something permanent. But my experience of adjuncting has been extremely disruptive to the general sort of routine that I try to establish in the home. And so if I had to choose between just doing, say, like the research I'm doing now and publishing, or adjuncting, I would not choose the adjuncting. Not because I don't enjoy teaching or the students aren't great, but simply because I have no control over when these classes are scheduled or which class really. And so there will be this semester some repetition of the classes I did last semester, but it's not really in my hands. And so
Okay.
it's
Yes.
interesting to hear from you though that this is something actually that you did regularly for years. And so how did you manage that? Which I think is also a question that applies more broadly to people who have to teach courses anyways, whether they are in tenured
Mhm.
jobs or not. So how do you manage sort of that lack of control?
Right. Well, I guess from what you say, maybe I've been very fortunate right from the start. When I started teaching as an adjunct, I was teaching in the continuing education, and I taught in the evenings. So Chris would come home and he would, hold down the fort at home while I was out teaching. Um, I did have to find the time during the day to prepare for classes. And of course, when you're teaching a new class, teaching a class for the first time, that's a lot of time investment to develop your materials and then be familiar with them and be prepared for your class. I mean, even apart from then grading student work and so on and so forth. But I taught in the evenings for many years while our children were small. Um, I then moved to a somewhat earlier time in the day, but still maybe, I guess, late afternoon, early evening, and was teaching intensive classes. So I would teach just like a 7-week class. We have our semesters, we have options for a fall 1 and a fall 2 and a spring 1 and a spring 2. So I was teaching the same classes, but in a much more concentrated time period. So it was maybe 8 weeks of kind of intense work for me, but still not as disruptive for the family because I was going out later in the day when my husband can be home. So, but I had to find that time during the day to get that work done, which as if you're home with children can be challenging. But I still found that I was able to, to get some structure in there. And I couldn't have a scheduled time, but I would have to aim for a certain time every day and hope to get that time slot to work for me. And if it didn't, figure it out. I have, as the children have gotten older, I've been able to take just, I've moved off of the intensive class into just the regular semester long class, and I'm doing it earlier in the day because they're old enough that I only have 2 left in homeschool that I can go out for a few hours and it's not a problem.
Was there ever a
So
time?
it shifted, just to say it shifted over the years according to the needs of the family. But I've also had the good fortune to be able to ask for particular time slots and even particular classes.
Oh, great. Okay. So that's good to know that that actually is an option. I'm finding as I do these interviews that there's actually a lot more flexibility administratively if you just ask, but there's a sort of
Mhm.
sense that that's sort of not apropos or whatever. So it's good to know that actually you can just make those requests and see what happens. I wonder if there's ever a time where you were able with children who are old enough to sort of recruit them to help you with the
Oh
little.
yeah, absolutely.
So you like recycle the the help
Mhm.
kind of? Was that your experience?
Yes, yes. So, do you homeschool your children at this
We have
point, or?
we have started, and we're not sure we will continue. We'll see. There's a school we are investigating, but right now, I mean, my eldest is 5, so
Yeah.
we're doing very
So
basic things.
yes,
Mhm.
um, yeah, yeah. As the children get older, it's definitely a real advantage. And even the when you do homeschool, it can sound like a lot of work with a lot of children, but a lot of the work you're doing with them all at once, sitting down and reading um, books together, even if we're different age groups. But then at some point, the older ones can be, as you say, recruited to to assist. Can you read this to the, yeah, but if you can you put the little one down for an apple, I go and work on this. So definitely, and it's if you're home the with the children, home as a family, that's a natural part of the day, um, to be able to you're creating a community at home, and everybody is helping in the various ways that they can help. Chores, helping with younger siblings.
Yeah, I mean, so this has been my experience already, even though I mostly have toddlers. Like my 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, like they emptied the dishwasher and they've been doing
Mhm.
this. So there's like a lot of stuff I'm already delegating, folding of the laundry, all these sorts of things. So I feel like that will apply also to the schooling eventually. And, I think usually when people talk about time management in academic context, almost always they insist that you must outsource some responsibilities, and I think there probably is some truth to that. But childcare is usually top of the list, and I'm not criticizing people who do that.
Mhm.
Everyone's got to make their choice, about their specific family. But I have encountered several academics who don't do that, who keep their children at home, who homeschool their children themselves. I was having a conversation with a professor at Duke who homeschools her own children, and she does this thing called the Robinson method. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it was
Mhm.
developed by an academic who his wife died, and he wanted to kind of continue with their form of schooling, and so he came up with this very sort of independent way of having them follow the curriculum, and it worked. And
Yeah.
so there are ways to do it. And I sometimes wonder whether taking my children to school would actually not be more work in a
Mhm.
certain sense, because you got to get the lunches, you got to get everybody in the car, you got to get everybody to the school, back from the school. Like, seems like it's a lot, which is something we're sort of realizing as we consider this one school that we're thinking about right now. So I don't know. I don't have
Yes, yes.
answers, but I am questioning the status quo a little bit. And I think probably a lot of people are post-COVID, sort of thinking about
Mhm.
questions in a new light. But so I wanted to ask a slightly different question about the homeschooling and the adjuncting. I think it's very easy to see academic responsibilities and the more personal ones as sort of at odds with each other, but there are a lot of ways in which they actually complement each other in my experience. And so I see this a lot in my research. I do work and it sort of, sophisticates my mind. And then I'm going to bring that to bear in my conversations with my kids. I have not seen something similar with adjuncting. So I don't see really where me teaching to these children, or not children, sorry, young adults, is translating really into anything at home. So but you have so much more experience, so I'm wondering if you have some light maybe to share here.
I think if I understand what you're saying, I think that will come when your children are older, perhaps.
Sure.
Um, because yeah, as you get into the teen years, then they start to have something more in common with the students you're interacting with on campus. And I think it has for me, I'm seeing from the not mother, from the not mom perspective, I encounter young adults, late teens, and that gives me some sense of where my children are headed, but also that I can get some kind of insight into what young people, kind of what's forming their minds at this point in our culture.
Mm.
Um, and I think it's helped to give me some perspective on what my children might be facing and be able to, in some ways, to help. It has helped me to have conversations with them about some of the challenges they might face. I'll talk to them about challenges I see my students facing.
Mm.
Um, and but I'll also on the flip side, I have found myself over the years as my children became more college age, um, sometimes saying to the students, sometimes turning that around onto to the students in my classroom and saying, look, um, I'm going to tell you some things I've told my students who are college age or about to go to college because nobody might have told you this yet. So, I have seen it work both ways because there are things that as if we're teaching, when we're in the classroom, there are things that we get to know about the way college students operate that as a parent, you would like your child to be able to maybe avoid those problems or know how to tap into better, have a better relationship with their teacher, or be more productive in their class time, or the working with them in their college career. But you can see it from the inside when you're teaching. Most parents don't have that. If they're not in a teaching position in a college, they don't have that. They don't see what's going on with the students. So I think I have seen it go both ways. For me to be able to give some guidance, effective guidance to my children, but then also as a mother to be able to turn around to those students in the class and say, do you know that, if this is what I say as a mother to my children? I wonder if you know this. So I think there is something there that gives us, as parents who are also in the classroom, as our children get more towards that age, that gives us a kind of unique perspective that we can share both with our students and with our children.
That's really valuable. Yeah, that didn't occur to me at all, but I can see now that you've said it, like, okay, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. There's a lot I could be picking up here. Thank you. That's really valuable. I want to ask sort of adjacent questions. So I said a little bit ago that I've found adjuncting just to be a bit disruptive in terms of the scheduling. And you talked a little bit about the prep and how that can be a little bit onerous, especially for a new course. Are there any kind of hacks or strategies you found to kind of regularize that process? Or is it's just really tough? At least for a new course to get it off the ground. It's just a lot of work, and there's not really a way of kind of consolidating that.
Yeah, I mean, that new course is that's the real challenge. Certainly trying to reaching out to other faculty who've taught courses like that, getting copies of their syllabus, maybe getting their insight on things that have worked for them. Of course, you want to develop a class that suits your strengths and interests so that you can best serve the students, but to make use of the experience of other instructors has been very helpful for me. Also, I don't know if this is a hack, this is just something I do. If I really need some extra time thinking some things through, when I get some daily exercise, whether that's going for a walk or going for a run, I'll use that time to I'll set myself something to think about. Okay, let me think about how I'm going to structure how am I going to structure this class, and I'll spend that hour not just walking and not listening to something, but just use it as concentrated time to think through a problem. And I've gotten a lot of work done that way. So I'm kind of doing two things at once, and it's good for me all around because I'm getting exercise as well.
That's awesome. I mean, so that actually anticipates the question I was going to ask, which is how do you find time for things that are not academic? But it sounds like you do. I actually talked with Chris about this, a double dipping sort of thing.
Yeah.
So you kind of lump certain things together. I think my experience, at least as someone who's very early on, is that that's sort of difficult to do because I feel like the whole schedule's still pretty shaky. And, when I start to find my rhythm, I'm more hopeful that I will, exercise or like.
Yeah, your children are so young that it's hard. It's hard when because
Yeah,
you can't really leave a 5-year-old in charge with
yeah,
while you
yeah.
hit the road.
Yeah, no, that's true. I do find like nap times if I'm very rigid with nap time and bedtime, like I can buy myself some periods for accomplishing certain things. That's like one way I avoid really excessive in-home childcare fees is that I just do a lot of the work when they're napping and a lot of the work when they go to bed. And so
Mhm.
that's really useful. But so I want to circle back a little bit to the story you began with. It sounded like you never really aspired to a tenure track job? That was something, it sounds from the story like you decided pretty early on, I'm not going to do this. Is that right? And if so, what was the process for discerning out of that particular
Mm,
track? Like,
mm.
what were the things that sort of guided that decision?
So yeah, as I mentioned, I did not come from an academic family, and there were not really any particular expectations from my family as to what I would do. But I actually started my college career as a nursing major and did that for 2 years um, before switching to philosophy. And so I think in my as a young adult, starting my kind of independent time, it seemed very cut and dry to me. If I was going to be a nurse, it would be easy to get a job as a nurse. And when I decided to make the switch to philosophy, I didn't really know what that was going to look like coming out the other side. And I didn't have any conception of what it meant to have an academic career. But my husband did, because his father was a college professor. So um, he knew that that's what he wanted to do. And initially, I liked philosophy so much that I could certainly imagine. It seemed worthwhile to me to get the degree, to go on and get the degree. And I would have been happy to continue as well um, with an academic career had that presented itself. But I wasn't looking for one. I wasn't driven to that was not a goal that was driving me. So when I talked about that openness, that's partly what I meant, that um, I didn't have a hard goal that I was aiming for personally. Um, we had, because of the way that we had structured our time in graduate school once we started having children, so that we were splitting our time, um, and we learned how to really work in a pretty focused way, because uh, my husband would have the baby the first half of the day, or it might have been the other way around. I can't remember now. Um, and we actually just split the day. You've got her now. And I'll work. I've got her at this time slot, and you work. And then we might get some work done in the evenings if she when she was asleep. Um, we had one of our professors had suggested to us that we might find a joint position somewhere, share a position. And we thought for a while, we thought that this is what we're going to do. This is working well for us. We really enjoy um, sharing the at-home responsibilities with the children. So I think had something like that presented itself, we would have probably done. I don't know how that would have looked, because I don't even know that I've heard of such things, but maybe it would have worked. Um, but the way it did work out, I didn't have, I didn't have a strong um, sense that I needed, and that for my own fulfillment, I needed to um, have a career in academia. But I've been very, very pleased to continue teaching. It has, it has made those years of that I invested in the PhD, which I thought was, just worth it in itself. Um, all that, learning all that, and the discipline of work, and then the discipline required to write and successfully come through that whole process with the PhD was worthwhile in itself. But I've been very pleased to be able to continue that. That it wasn't just something I did and then that was it. Um, I mean, it would have been an enriching experience anyway, but to have been able to continue teaching just keeps that connection and keeps my brain thinking in those ways, and keeps me interested in reading certain things. I don't spend a lot of time, because I don't do a lot of I don't really do research anymore. I just read in connection with what I'm teaching, and I've tried to make it fresh every semester, so I'm not just stagnating. Um, and I found that personally very fulfilling with all the other things that I'm doing in, with my life. And that's been enough for me, but I don't know if it would be enough for someone else. I think it maybe depends on a person's temperament um, and personality.
So it sounds though like you were open to it. The opportunity didn't present itself for something tenure track, but something a little bit different. And so you just went with what presented itself. Is
Mhm.
that basically
That's right.
yeah, okay. Yeah.
And and it did mean that so I mentioned that we were not homeschooling the children initially. That wasn't it wasn't a plan that we had, but I think because we had made this decision that, well, I would just teach the one class a semester and stay home with the kids, because if I was doing anything else, we'd have to figure out what do we do for childcare. And we had really, in both of us, really enjoyed the opportunity to be home with our children. It's a real, I've seen it more and more as a privilege, the more I look back on it now, um, to have that opportunity. But because I was home with the children, and just had the adjuncting on my plate, that meant that I was we it was easy for us to make the decision to homeschool when that came along. We actually did have our first child was in school for a few years before we made the decision to homeschool, but it was an easy one to make because I was just at home with the younger children anyway. So it seemed a natural extension of what I was already doing at home with the children. Um, so having made that decision and being satisfied with it opened up the opportunity to make the decision to homeschool. It made it an easy choice.
Sure. No, I mean,
And then that has been itself such a fulfilling way to live my life with my married life, my life as a mother, and having the I think it's been good for them too to see that I'm engaged in something outside the home that I can that I work on, and that we don't have like heavy philosophical conversations at home, but we have thoughtful conversations, and they're familiar with life on campus. By the time they're coming as freshmen, they've been um, on and around campus events, and they feel somewhat comfortable with the thought of navigating college.
yeah, I spoke at length with Chris about this, and it was really fascinating to hear just how kind of, I thought, countercultural he was, and just bringing his kids to his office or whatever. And so I've attempted this since speaking to him, and I'm adjuncting right now at the University of Connecticut, and people have been so receptive. I
Mhm.
bring all my kids, all my toddlers to the potluck, and they're like, "Oh, this is great. Let me hold your baby." And so actually, people are really interested in making it a little bit more family friendly, which was very surprising to me. So
Mhm.
if you want to hear more about that, they should definitely listen also to that episode with your husband. But I think you have a really unique vantage point here because you've had this experience with kids in school, you've had this experience with kids at home, and you're married to someone who is, a very successful tenure track professor, or sorry, tenure professor now. And so you have sort of a window into all these different worlds. And I feel that makes you uniquely positioned to answer a question that I am wrestling with, which is, do you think it would be possible to take on a tenure track job early on when you were first beginning, either while your kid was in school or while you later homeschooled? I'm especially interested in the homeschooling case because I think that's, if the answer is yes to that, it will probably be yes to the um, schooling of the children elsewhere. And so what do you think? Do you think that would have been possible for you at that time to do the same kind of job as your husband, or would that really have been
For me to do that and to homeschool?
yeah.
Not, I think it would not have been possible for me to do that and have the kind of successful career that he has had. Um, it wouldn't have been, I don't think it would have been possible. Well, I want to answer this carefully for it's hard to envision like an alternative um, reality. But the I think it would have been hard to do that and still have the kind of family life that we have. Um, I think I don't want to say I don't think it would be possible because I think maybe for the for some people it would take a lot of work, very intentional work, I think, to really maintain a strong um, family structure and connection. And as you mentioned, with all the coming and all the things that you need to attend to with children, when they're when you're also then taking them to school things and all of that. I mean, you still do activities when you homeschool, but it's not quite the same. I think you're more free to decide what you'll do and what you won't do, and there's less pressure. I think to do one thing or another. Um, I think it would be very challenging, but I think that I think it could be done. I don't think personally for me, I think if we had both um, attempted that I would still probably not have been productive as my husband. In the Because I think somebody has to kind of hold down the home base if you're going to have a large family, and but I do, I know people who do this, and it looks like, oh, to me, from my perspective, it looks exhausting. It looks like so much work, and again, that makes me feel privileged in a way. When my life as an adjunct, I get to read stuff I enjoy and think about it and talk to students about it. But I don't have to go to committee meetings. I don't have to oversee any. I'm kind of like I'm kind of like a ghost in the department. I just come in and do my thing, and I don't get involved in much other than some social things here and there. And have conversations with other faculty, and we talk about the classes and so on and so forth. Um, the kind of It would have been hard for me to put in the kind of work on my career that I've seen my husband put in on his.
Yeah, maybe it's an unfair question because I think your husband's also probably unusually productive. And so I think for anybody, whether they have children or not, it would be difficult to match Christopher Tollefsen. But that is good to hear. I think I appreciate the frankness. And my own experience trying to do all these things has been that it is exhausting. And probably some kind of external supports are necessary. So I'll have future
Mm.
episodes trying to figure out, what that can look like. I think usually people think if you're going to externalize something, it should be like housework or something like this, childcare, which we talked about a lot. But I'm very curious about outsourcing sort of academic stuff. There are people who have personal assistants. So this is a whole nother thing that I need to explore, but I don't know. I don't know anything about it yet. So
Right.
that's good to know, though. I think those were all my questions, which you've answered so well. So thank you so much for your time. This was really valuable, and I learned a huge amount, honestly, from you and
You're very welcome. And when you started out by mentioning that you haven't come across someone um, like me, and I think sometimes I think my first thought when you said that was because we're in the shadows, I think, and that's one of the things that I would say that one of the things that if you're not going to pursue an academic career, you have to be okay with that. You have to kind of be okay with being in the shadows. Like, yeah, people aren't going to know who you are, like in academic circles, um, or when you're at something, gathering people, or if they don't know anything about you, they're going to make assumptions when they know that you stay home with your children, which is, it doesn't bother me, but it's a reality to making that choice, is that you do kind of recede in a certain way, um, into part of you recedes into the background, and so yeah, this I'm not surprised that you haven't heard of or found, other people like me. I think they're out there, but you don't hear about them.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think also, to some extent, if you're in the humanities, certainly this is something you have to confront because your papers are read probably by three people, and that's a hard reality to live with if you don't love it the way that you love it.
Yeah.
And so I think hearing from you and hearing your story is, at least for me personally, really reinvigorated. Just have the desire for the truth, which should drive
Mhm.
us in all we do, not
Right.
just the academic stuff, but the home education or the parenting generally. These are all different ways I at least have encountered multiple kinds of truths. So, yeah, that's it.
Very, very good. All right.
Cool. Okay, well,
Well, it was a
thank you so
pleasure
much.
meeting you.